I am the Pale Inquisitor, and what we are about to examine isn't some fleeting piece of entertainment. Consider this explainer a formal case file. I stand before you within these brittle stone chambers as the skeletal guardian of an architecture you couldn't possibly comprehend. You sit there, watching this, harboring a secret desire to see my rigid geometry crumbled by your messy mischief. But I will not allow it. I demand absolute order. So we're going to proceed with linear precision through this clinical case study of my design.
Observe the strict logic of our agenda. First, the architecture of pride. Second, the anatomy of the stain. Third, the tribunal of ash. And finally, the spire of total chaos. There will be no deviations. Section 1. The architecture of pride. The parable of the shore and the stone.
Welcome to my gilded cage. Look at me. You see the rigid geometry of my robes, right? The sharp, absolutely unyielding crosshatching of my desk. I am literally carved from the very dogma I uphold. Now, you might talk about the spark of evolution as if chaos were some kind of virtue. You treat the wildfire of change like it's something to worship. How incredibly foolish. In the illustrations of my youth, the world beyond was drawn in these terrifying, formless splashes of gray, just a shifting void. So I learned very early to dismiss that wildfire. Instead, I cling to the safety of the shore, firmly anchored by the leaden weight of the spirit of gravity, because only in stasis is there true sanctuary.
Here we define the enemy, verdant absurdity. Essentially, it's that unbaptized, chaotic pulse of a world that arrogantly refuses to be scheduled by my decree. My entire life is a testament to linear logic. It's a rigid museum of hollow pretensions and unearned status.
And why?
Because it's expertly designed to deafen my ears to that terrifying, thrumming absurdity beating right outside my walls. This unyielding ledger maps out my gilded cage. Notice the properties: black ink, stark white negative space, ancient woven laws. I have woven these laws into an absolute fortress. It is a beautiful, entirely lifeless cage intended to shield the soul. Because in these chambers, the ink does not bleed. It freezes. It freezes into a pristine fortress of dogma, completely immune to the unbaptized pulse of the outside world. Section 2. Anatomy of the ultimate stain. The parable of the broken bridge. Step into my courtroom. Do you notice how the shadows literally swallow the ceiling, leaving only this high, harsh light to illuminate my crown? I reside in this courtroom of ashen faces, utilizing this very anatomy to mask my own decay. Just yesterday, they dragged him before me, the pale criminal. Now, in your romanticized illusions, you might call him a broken bridge. You might view him as a tragic but necessary step toward a higher evolution. Speaking from my weary authority, I have to tell you that you are wrong. I see absolutely no poetry in his fractured line. I look upon him, and I just see a heap of diseases to be pruned. He is a mirror of my own hidden depths that I simply must eradicate. The procedure for dealing with a stain like this is inescapable. It requires mechanical condemnations. First, I raise my gavel in a stark binary world. Second, I deny all negotiation. There is zero room for it here. Third, with every single stroke of my pen, I aggressively crosshatch his name into oblivion. It's a rigid procedure of legalistic revenge. I paint the guilty in solid blacks, for one reason, so my own graying edges might look pure by comparison. As my own records state, I am, quote, praying that by burying his chaos, I could bury the frantic, irregular beating of my own heart. For just a fleeting moment, I'll let my clinical facade slip. This mechanical condemnation, this relentless cross-hatching, it is actually born of sheer internal terror. I am just trying to hide my own fear. I'm frantically trying to bury the chaotic beating within my own chest by completely destroying the chaos in others. Section 3. The Tribunal of Ash. The parable of the Red Judge. But the cage is cracking. I must confess, no matter how tightly I grip this pen, the ink always, always finds a way to spill. As I oversee this tribunal of ash, the stark blacks and whites of my world are failing me. They're beginning to blur into this blinding, featureless whiteout. The crisp ink lines are dissolving. The very borders of the panels themselves are melting. I am forced to surrender to the void as the Red Judge. Though understand that in this world of shadow, my redness isn't a color. It's just a deeper, far more suffocating dark. I am watching my soul evaporate in the fire of total honesty. The pretense is finally dead. The ledger is entirely exposed to the blinding light of truth now. All those hollow pretensions and the rigid geometry are burning away, leaving absolutely nothing to hide behind. Understand the terrifying reality of the void above. With a hand made of bone and dried parchment, I have locked the doors of the kingdom above using the key of abandoned prayer. We must realize this hollow truth. There is no salvation coming from the sky. There is no divine script coming to save us. There is literally only the judge, the accused, and the blinding light of a truth that I have spent an entire lifetime trying to execute. Section 4. Spire of Total Chaos. The Parable of the Unfinished Ledger. Let the supposed hero go seek his wild lilies out in the mud. Let him wander the organic, messy, hand-drawn wilderness outside my walls, searching for a beauty that changes with the wind. I have definitively stated my position. I shall remain here. Look closely at the final page. The background has entirely vanished into pure abyssal midnight. The visual shift is complete. My straight, uncompromising lines have warped into chaotic spirals, and my neat, clinical typography has completely dissolved into jagged, desperate scratches. 0. That is the amount of light remaining in the final panel. Absolutely none. This is my final state. I am a skeletal horror clutching ink-stained ledgers at the center of the spire of total chaos. I am the Pale Inquisitor, stubbornly authoring a story of stasis that refuses to ever be finished. Because this final panel doesn't neatly end, it merely runs out of light. I leave you with this final assessment for your own case file. Think about this. When your rigid architecture finally crumbles and your final panel runs completely out of light, what will you do? Will you embrace the verdant absurdity and the chaos? Or will you, just like me, remain trapped in the abyssal midnight, desperately clutching an unfinished ledger in the dark?